Hey everyone. This is Six Path Weeb, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's fanfic topic is, what if Naruko turned into a Pokémon? In this story, we'll explore a unique crossover where the ninja world meets the Pokémon world. What would happen if Naruko suddenly transformed into a Pokémon? How would her powers change, and how would the people around her react? Let's find out together. Disclaimer, the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin. The sky was dark, and thick clouds covered the sun like a great blanket. Long ago, this valley had been a place where two legendary leaders, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, once faced each other to decide the future of their world. Their enormous statues had stood tall for generations, reminding everyone of their courage and dreams for peace. Now those statues were no longer whole. Time and the force of a great battle had turned them into piles of stone scattered across the valley floor. Two figures stood among the broken rocks. One of them was a young girl of 16. She was not very tall, but she stood firmly on her feet, breathing deeply as she gathered her strength. Her bright golden hair stuck out in cheerful spikes, even though it was messy from the long struggle she had just faced. Her sky-blue eyes were full of determination, and 3 whisker-shaped marks rested on each of her cheeks. Her orange and black jacket was torn in several places, and her clothes were dusty from the long day. Still, her headband shone proudly on her forehead. This girl was known across many lands for her bright spirit and endless determination. Her name was Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko was the daughter of the brave hero known as the Yellow Flash and the strong-willed Red Death. She was famous for being the most energetic and stubborn ninja in her village. Inside her lived a powerful and ancient being, the 9-tailed fox called Kurama, who had become her partner and friend. Standing across from her was a tall man with pale skin and shaggy white hair. One of his eyes was red with swirling patterns, and the other was a mysterious purple eye with gentle rings spreading outward. His name was Obito Uchiha. For a very long time, Obito had believed that the world needed to be changed in a very serious way. Because of that belief, he had started a huge conflict known as the Fourth Shinobi War. Many people from many lands had worked together to stop the war and bring back peace. Naruko had been one of the most important helpers in that effort. Now the valley was quiet again. Naruko breathed in slowly and looked at Obito. "Please give it up, Obito," she said gently, even though she was very tired. "The fighting is finished. Everyone just wants peace now." Obito swayed slightly where he stood. He looked at the sky and then back at Naruko. "It may look finished," he replied quietly, "but sometimes the end of one story becomes the beginning of another." Naruko tilted her head in confusion. "What are you talking about?" Inside her mind, Kurama suddenly spoke. "Kid. Something strange is happening." Before Naruko could ask what he meant, Obito lifted his hand. A swirling space began to twist in the air like a spinning whirlpool made of light. Naruko's eyes widened. "Hey! What are you doing?" "Move, Naruko," Kurama called urgently. But the spinning light had already grown too bright. "Kamui," Obito whispered. In a single moment, the spiraling light wrapped around Naruko like a gentle storm. The world stretched and twisted as if it were being folded like paper. Naruko felt herself being pulled away from the valley. "Kurama," she shouted. "I'm here," Kurama replied. The light spun faster and faster until everything vanished. Back in the valley, the wind blew softly through the broken stones. When the other ninja finally arrived, they searched the area carefully. But Naruko Uzumaki was nowhere to be found. Far away from the valley, in a place where there was no ground and no sky, Naruko floated through a wide, quiet darkness. It was not scary. It was simply empty. Kurama?" she asked. "Yes? Where are we?" Kurama thought for a moment before answering. "It seems that Obito's technique didn't send us to a normal place. We're drifting in the space between worlds." Naruko blinked. "The space between worlds?" "Yes," Kurama said calmly. "Think of it like a hallway that connects many different doors." Naruko slowly turned around in the floating darkness. "That's actually kind of amazing." Kurama chuckled softly. "You always find something exciting in every situation." Just then, far ahead of them, a small light appeared. At first it was no bigger than a star. But little by little it grew brighter. Naruko pointed at it. "Hey! Do you see that?" "Yes," Kurama replied. "That might be one of those doors I mentioned." The light expanded until it became a shining path stretching across the darkness. Naruko smiled. Well, we can't just float here forever. Let's go see where it leads. She gently drifted toward the light. As she did, distant voices echoed softly through the strange space. How interesting, one voice said. A new traveler, another wondered. Where will she arrive? Asked a smaller, curious voice. Naruko stopped and looked around. Hello? She called. Is someone there? The voices seemed surprised. Oh. She can hear us. Well, that makes things more interesting. Naruko scratched the back of her head. I'm Naruko Uzumaki. Who are you? But before anyone could answer, the bright path suddenly shone even brighter. Kurama spoke quickly. It looks like the door has chosen our destination. Naruko laughed with excitement. A whole new world to explore? That sounds awesome. The light wrapped around her gently, like a warm breeze. And in the next moment, Naruko Uzumaki and Kurama disappeared into a brand new adventure, one that would take them to places no ninja had ever seen before. Somewhere far away, the mysterious voices continued their quiet conversation. Did you catch her name? Yes, one of them said thoughtfully. Naruko Uzumaki. Another voice chuckled. Then we should keep an eye out. After all, the voice added kindly, someone with a spirit that bright is sure to make every world a little happier. Naruko opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, the bright sunlight made everything look blurry. The gentle rocking beneath her made her feel as if she were floating on a giant cradle. Ugh! She groaned softly, lifting a hand to shield her eyes. Around her stood several unfamiliar faces. They looked relieved, curious, and slightly puzzled all at once. Ah, she's waking up, said the tall man in the white lab coat. Naruko blinked a few times before sitting up carefully. Who are you? She asked. And where am I? The tall man adjusted his glasses and smiled kindly. My name is Samuel Oak, he said. This is my assistant, Austin Elm. And these are my students, Harold Birch, Augustine Sycamore, and Aurea Juniper. Each of them waved politely. Naruko rubbed the back of her head. My name's Naruko. Naruko Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Naruko, Aurea said warmly. Naruko looked around the deck of the ship in confusion. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, sparkling beneath the sun. How did I get here? She wondered aloud. One of our crew members found you floating on the back of that Milotic, one of the sailors explained, pointing toward a graceful serpentine creature resting near the side of the ship. The creature shimmered beautifully in the sunlight. Naruko stared at it. That's a Pokémon? She asked. Yes, Elm replied with a friendly nod. Milotic is known as the tender Pokémon. Naruko scratched her cheek thoughtfully. Pokémon. Yeah, I remember hearing that word before. Everyone leaned forward slightly. From where? Augustine asked curiously. Naruko pointed upward toward the sky. From a weird white horse thing with a golden wheel and green eyes. And there was also this big spooky dragon with 6 legs. The entire group froze. Harold blinked. Wait. What? Naruko nodded confidently. Yeah. The horse one said its name was. She squinted as she tried to remember. Arcane. Archery. Arceus? Professor Oak asked carefully. Naruko snapped her fingers. Yeah. Arceus. That's the one. Everyone on the deck gasped. You met Arceus? Harold exclaimed. Naruko crossed her arms. Yep. And then he, or whatever, teleported me way up in the sky and dropped me into the ocean. Professor Oak rubbed his chin in amazement. That is quite extraordinary. Naruko sighed dramatically. I was already super tired too. My chakra was almost empty. Elm tilted his head. Chakra? He asked. What is that? Naruko blinked. You know. Chakra. Energy. Ninja stuff. The professors and students exchanged confused glances. Augustine said slowly. I don't think we have anything called chakra in this world. Naruko's eyes widened. Wait. She looked around again. The endless ocean. The strange creatures. The unfamiliar people. You mean, I'm not even in my world anymore? The group looked at one another. Professor Oak gave a gentle, thoughtful smile. It appears, he said kindly, that you may have arrived in the world of Pokémon. Naruko stared at him for several seconds. Then she suddenly grinned. A whole new world, huh? She jumped to her feet energetically, nearly losing her balance as the ship rocked. Well, all right then, she declared brightly. If I'm stuck here, I might as well explore it. Harold laughed. I like her attitude. Aurea nodded. She's brave. Professor Oak folded his arms thoughtfully. In that case, he said, perhaps this is the beginning of a very interesting journey. Naruko placed her hands on her hips and looked out over the sparkling sea with shining excitement in her blue eyes. All right, Pokémon World, she announced happily. Let's see what kind of adventures you've got waiting for me. And far above the clouds, in the quiet Hall of Origin, Arceus watched the scene unfold with calm curiosity. The new arrival had begun her story. And it was only the beginning. Naruko looked around the bright laboratory with wide, curious eyes. The room was filled with machines that hummed softly and shelves lined with books and strange devices. She folded her arms and spoke thoughtfully. So, you all really do not know about chakra? She said quietly. Then that mysterious Pokémon named Arceus must have been right. I really am in a completely new world. The people in the room exchanged puzzled glances. Naruko scratched the back of her head and gave a friendly smile. Tell you what. I will explain chakra if you explain what these Pokémon are. Professor Oak adjusted his glasses and nodded kindly. That is a fair request. He gestured toward the elegant, shimmering creature floating peacefully in a nearby pool. Pokémon are special creatures that live all across this world, he explained. They come in many different shapes and sizes. This one here is called Milotic. Pokémon and people share the world together. Sometimes they help us with work, sometimes they play with us, and sometimes trainers hold friendly competitions with them. He smiled proudly. I am a Pokémon professor. Elm here is studying to become one, and these 3 young people are my students. Naruko's eyes sparkled with interest. All right then, she said. She held out her hand, palm up, and focused for a moment. A soft blue sphere of swirling light slowly appeared above her hand, glowing like a tiny star. This is called a Rasengan, she said gently. Everyone gasped in amazement. Chakra is the energy created when a person's body and spirit work together, Naruko explained. In my world, people learned how to guide that energy to do incredible things. Some could grow forests, shape water, or create beautiful forms made of light and wind. Milotic blinked in surprise. Milotic. Naruko laughed softly. I know, it sounds surprising. Even I thought many things were impossible when I was younger. Milotic tilted its head curiously. Oh, and walking on water is pretty normal where I come from, Naruko added cheerfully. Milo? The Pokémon asked again. Naruko shook her head. I cannot grow forests myself. That was a skill someone else had in my world. A woman named Aurea looked amazed. You can understand what Milotic is saying? Naruko blinked. Wait. You cannot? Professor Oak stroked his beard thoughtfully. We can sometimes guess what Pokémon mean from their sounds and actions, but we are still learning their language. He paused, curious. You mentioned your world earlier. What did you mean by that? Naruko thought for a moment, trying to explain simply. Well, I was traveling when something very strange happened. A powerful being appeared, and suddenly I found myself falling from the sky into this world. That is when Milotic helped keep me safe. Everyone in the room listened carefully. So you do not know anything about this place? Professor Oak asked kindly. Not really, Naruko admitted. Professor Oak's eyes brightened with an idea. In that case, I have a suggestion, he said. How would you like to become one of my students? What? 3 voices said at once. One of the students looked surprised. But we had to take a big exam before we could study here. Professor Oak chuckled gently. That exam simply measures basic knowledge. Naruko has come from another world entirely. The best way for her to learn about this one is by studying Pokémon. He turned to her with a warm smile. What do you say, Naruko? Would you like to join my students? Inside her mind, Naruko quietly spoke to her old companion. What do you think, Kurama? The deep but calm voice replied, it sounds like a good idea. We can learn more about this world together. Naruko grinned brightly. Then I am in. Thank you, Professor. 7 years later. A small handheld game console rested in Naruko's hands as she sat near a wide window overlooking the sparkling ocean. A cheerful introduction played on the screen. Hi. Sorry to keep you waiting. The character inside the game said. Welcome to the world of Pokémon. Naruko laughed softly and lowered the console for a moment. This introduction feels familiar, she said to herself. She looked out at the sea stretching toward the horizon. The last 7 years had changed many things. Naruko had grown taller and stronger. Her bright blonde hair had grown longer and slightly messy, and the whisker-like marks on her cheeks had softened with time. She now wore an orange shirt beneath a white lab coat, comfortable dark pants, sturdy shoes, and a pair of red goggles resting on her head. Several Pokéballs hung from her belt, and a large scroll rested across her back. If her old friends from her first world saw her now, they would be very surprised. Naruko Uzumaki had become a Pokémon professor. Her special shadow clone technique had helped her study faster than anyone expected. With her clones helping research many topics at once, she learned quickly about Pokémon habitats, friendships between people and Pokémon, and the mysteries of the regions. Her friends had also followed their dreams. Aurea had become the Pokémon professor of the Unova region. Harold had become the professor of Hoenn. Augustine had become the professor of Kalos. And Naruko. Well, looks like we are almost there, she said as the ship's announcement echoed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, we will soon arrive in Castelia City. Naruko smiled and stretched her arms. Finally. I have been looking forward to this visit. Kurama's calm voice replied in her mind, it will be interesting to see what adventures await. Castelia City. On the busy docks, Aurea stood with 4 young students beside her. One of them, a cheerful girl named Bianca, looked around curiously. Professor, who are we waiting for? She asked. Aurea smiled. An old friend of mine, she said warmly. She is a Pokémon professor too. One of the boys looked surprised. Really? From which region? Aurea's smile grew even brighter as she looked toward the arriving ship. Well, she began. Her story is a little unusual. Far across the dock, a familiar blonde girl in a white lab coat stepped off the ship, smiling brightly at the city ahead. And a new adventure was about to begin. Aurea. The visiting Pokémon professor was about to answer the boy's question, but she paused when she heard the very person she had been talking about. Naruto could be seen stepping off the boat and waving cheerfully as she walked toward the group. Now known as Naruko, she carried herself with bright energy and a warm smile. The sunlight shimmered on the water behind her, and a light breeze playfully ruffled her golden hair. A small blush appeared on Aurea's face. For a moment she looked a little flustered, though she quickly composed herself. It's good to see you, Naruko exclaimed as she approached. How have things been? Good, pretty good. Aurea replied, her voice bright though her cheeks were still pink. Nearby, the 4 young Pokémon trainers leaned closer together and whispered among themselves. What's going on with Professor Juniper? The first boy asked quietly. I've never seen her act like this. Maybe. The second boy began. Maybe. The second girl added thoughtfully. Maybe we should just ask her, said the first girl, Bianca, before stepping forward politely. Excuse me? Yes? Naruko asked kindly. Just then, the sunlight shone at just the right angle, giving Naruko a heroic glow. The breeze lifted her hair slightly, and she smiled warmly. It was the sort of smile that made everyone feel welcome. The 4 trainers were momentarily speechless. Bianca and Hilda both felt their cheeks grow warm, while Hilbert and Charon stared in amazement at Naruko's confident presence. Well, Bianca said at last, gathering her courage, we wanted to know how you and Professor Juniper know each other. Oh. That little story? Naruko said with a laugh. We met back when. Before she could finish, one of Naruko's Pokéballs suddenly popped open with a flash of light. A shining beam appeared beside the 2 professors. Startled, Aurea let out a small yelp and instinctively stepped closer to Naruko. When the light faded, a graceful Milotic appeared. Milotic. The elegant Pokémon said softly. Shizuka. How many times are you going to do that? Naruko said, laughing gently. Everyone, this is my very first Pokémon. Her name is Shizuka, which means serene. Milo, Shizuka replied with calm pride. Wow, Bianca exclaimed, her eyes sparkling as she stepped closer. I've never seen a Milotic in real life before. She's so much bigger than on TV. Before Bianca could get too close, Shizuka carefully used her psychic ability. Bianca floated gently into the air. Hey! Bianca squeaked in surprise as she felt herself rising. Shizuka waved her tail slowly, as if reminding Bianca to be polite and calm. "Shizuka, please put her down," Naruko said kindly. The Milotic obeyed at once, lowering Bianca safely back to the ground. "Oh yes," Aurea said suddenly. "I almost forgot introductions. These are 4 very promising new trainers from the Unova region." She pointed to each of them. "The blonde girl is Bianca. The brown-haired girl is Hilda. The boy beside her is her brother, Hilbert. And the one with the dark hair is Charon." "Nice to meet you all," Naruko said happily, raising her hand in greeting and smiling so widely that her eyes curved shut. Charon blinked. "How are you doing that?" he asked. "Doing what?" Naruko replied. "That I smile," Charon said calmly. "Oh. That?" Naruko laughed. "I'm not really sure. It just happens when I'm happy." "And another thing," Charon continued thoughtfully. "What do you mean when you call yourself the wandering Pokémon professor?" Naruko set Aurea gently back on her feet and answered with enthusiasm. "Well, I don't belong to just one region," she explained. "Instead, I travel everywhere learning about Pokémon, helping trainers, and making friends along the way. Somewhere during my travels, people started calling me that nickname." "Well," Charon began. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed from the direction of the city. A cloud of dust puffed into the air, and surprised voices could be heard in the distance. "What was that?" Hilda asked. "Let's go see," Hilbert said, already running ahead with determination. "Hilbert! Wait!" Hilda called, running after her brother. "Hilda! Hilbert!" Bianca cried, hurrying after them. Charon sighed quietly. "Troublesome," he murmured, though he followed his friends anyway. Aurea watched them go and then looked at Naruko. "That Charon boy reminds me of the friend you once told me about," she said. "Yeah," Naruko agreed with a cheerful grin. "He really does." She clapped her hands together excitedly. "Well, we can't just stand here. Let's go after them." Naruko gently took Aurea's hand, and the two hurried after the young trainers. As Naruko ran toward the busy streets of the Unova city, her eyes sparkled with curiosity and excitement. Unova was full of new Pokémon, new friends, and new stories waiting to be discovered, and Naruko Uzumaki was ready for every wonderful adventure ahead. The graceful Togekiss hovered in the air, her white wings catching the sunlight as if they were made from soft clouds. "Wow! A Togekiss," Bianca exclaimed, clasping her hands together with excitement. Naruko Uzumaki grinned brightly and placed her hands on her hips. Her golden hair fluttered slightly in the breeze as she looked proudly at her partner. "Pretty cool, right?" Naruko said cheerfully. "Hikari loves making a grand entrance." Togekiss gave a happy cry and circled gently above Naruko before gliding down beside her. Aldith stared for a moment, clearly surprised. The members of Team Plasma had expected something very different from the group of trainers standing before them. Instead of fear or anger, they were met with curious looks and bright smiles. Charon adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly. "You said you were Team Plasma. What exactly are you doing here?" Aldith straightened up and folded her arms. "We came to collect supplies." Naruko tilted her head. "Supplies?" "Pokeballs and potions," one of the grunts muttered quietly. Professor Juniper stepped forward kindly. "Those items belong to the trainers and stores in the city. Taking them without asking will only cause confusion and trouble." The grunts shifted awkwardly. Naruko suddenly raised a finger as if she had just thought of something very important. "Hey! I've got an idea." Everyone turned toward her. "What kind of idea?" Hilbert asked cautiously. Naruko beamed. "Instead of sneaking around and grabbing stuff, why don't we solve this the easy way?" Aldith raised an eyebrow. "And what would that be?" Naruko gestured toward the open plaza nearby where trainers often practiced with their Pokémon. "A friendly Pokémon challenge," she said. "Not a serious battle or anything rough. Just a skill contest. If your Pokémon can show teamwork and kindness, the shop owners might be willing to donate supplies for your cause." Bianca's eyes sparkled. "That actually sounds fun." Hilda nodded. "Way better than arguing." Charon sighed but gave a small smile. "Surprisingly logical. For Naruko." Naruko laughed proudly. "See? I'm full of good ideas." Aldith looked at her team. The grunts whispered among themselves, clearly relieved at the thought of avoiding trouble. Finally Aldith spoke. "Very well. A demonstration of teamwork. Nothing harmful." Naruko pumped her fist happily. "Awesome. Hikari, ready to show them your best moves?" "Togekiss." Hikari chirped, fluttering into the air again. Other trainers in the area began gathering around the plaza, curious about the sudden event. The mood quickly changed from fear to excitement. Hikari glided gracefully through the sky, leaving shimmering arcs in the sunlight. She spun gently and released a soft shower of glowing sparkles that drifted down like twinkling stars. The crowd gasped in delight. "Beautiful," Bianca whispered. One of Team Plasma's Pokémon stepped forward as well, performing its own careful routine of jumps and spins. Soon the plaza filled with laughter and applause as more Pokémon joined the friendly display. Naruko watched with a warm smile. "See?" she said to Aldith. "Pokémon and people working together makes everything better." Aldith looked around at the cheering crowd and the Pokémon happily showing off their talents. For a moment, the stern expression on her face softened. "Perhaps," she admitted quietly. High above the city, unseen by everyone below, a small yellow Pokémon sat on the edge of a rooftop. It watched Naruko and her Togekiss with curious eyes. "Aika," it said softly. The tiny observer gave a thoughtful nod before disappearing in a flash of light, continuing its mysterious mission to keep watch over the bright-hearted girl whose energy seemed to ripple across worlds. Aurea looked around the quiet edge of Pinwheel Forest, where the wind rustled gently through the tall trees. The group had followed the strange story told by the 3 members of Team Plasma, hoping to understand what was truly happening in the region. Naruko stood nearby with Hikari the Togekiss floating peacefully at her side. The young ninja girl brushed a strand of bright golden hair from her face and smiled thoughtfully. "Well," Naruko said softly, "at least the dust is settled. That was quite a surprise earlier." Hikari chirped happily and circled above her. Aurea folded her arms, still thinking about everything they had learned. "2 groups with the same name," she said. "That certainly makes things confusing." Charon adjusted his glasses. "Confusing, yes, but it also means we must be careful before judging anyone." Bianca nodded eagerly. "And we should try to help Pokémon wherever we can." Naruko grinned at that. Helping others was something she cared deeply about. "I like that plan," she said. "If people work together, there's always a way to make things better." Far away, deep inside Pinwheel Forest, the sunlight filtered through the leaves like golden ribbons. In a quiet clearing, a flash of white light appeared. When the glow faded, a small yellow Pokémon stood there, blinking curiously. Its long ears twitched as it looked around. "Pikachu," it said softly. The forest smelled fresh and green, and birds chirped overhead. Pikachu tilted its head, wondering how it had arrived in such a place. Then it heard rustling in the bushes. "Aika?" it called. The bushes shook again. Leaves fluttered aside as another Pokémon stepped out. It was round and pink with big bright eyes and a cheerful smile. "Jigglypuff." The newcomer sang happily. Pikachu stared for a moment, surprised. Of all the possible partners in the world, it had expected someone bold or mysterious. Perhaps a clever Lucario, or a powerful Mewtwo. Instead, it had been paired with a singing Jigglypuff. Pikachu sighed gently and covered its face with one paw. "Aika." Jigglypuff simply giggled. "Jiggly." The little singer bounced closer and offered Pikachu a friendly wave. For a moment Pikachu stayed quiet. Then it lowered its paw and smiled a little. Perhaps this partner would not be so bad after all. Back near the forest path, Naruko looked toward the trees as a soft breeze passed by. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Hilbert glanced around. "Feel what?" Naruko placed her hands behind her head, smiling in her usual carefree way. "Just a feeling," she said. "Like something new is about to begin." Hikari flapped her wings happily as if agreeing. Bianca clapped her hands. "Then we should keep exploring." Sharon nodded. "Carefully, of course." The friends began walking down the forest trail together, sunlight dancing across the path. Naruko walked at the front, humming cheerfully as she went. She believed that every journey held a story waiting to be discovered, and every new friend made the adventure brighter. And somewhere deeper in the forest, Pikachu and Jigglypuff had just begun their own very unusual partnership. Guys, that's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you for watching. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.